Hello, and welcome to the Be Purely Balanced podcast. I'm Dr. Crystal Couture, and today I'm here with Seth Monk. Seth is a Boston native who is a former Buddhist monk and Siddha Healer. After graduating from college with a BA in fine art, Seth traveled to Germany, where he ordained in the Vietnamese Zen tradition of Buddhism. During his 8 years in the monastery, Seth had the opportunity to study with some of the greatest Buddhist masters of our time, including Thich, Nhat, Hanh, and His Holiness, Dalai Lama. In 2014, Seth left the monastery and spent the next 2 years traveling through India and Australia. It was during this time in the Tibetan community of Dharmsala that Seth was initiated into the ancient Siddha Healing lineage. Currently, Seth lives back in Boston, where he is taught meditation at MIT, Blue Cross Blue Shield, in schools and yoga studios, and gives group Siddha Healings on a weekly basis. Welcome, Seth.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's an honor to have you on the show today and spend this sacred time together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really an honor to be here. Thank you. And thank you for the work you do. This is a really beautiful platform.
Thank you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey, being from Boston and ending up in a monastery? Mm-hmm. What happened? Give us the story.
I think I had a midlife crisis when I was 13 years old. When I was kind of, going through puberty, I started, for whatever reason, started looking around. And it was the time, Nirvana was big and Fight Club came out. And a lot of the pop culture kind of movement had to do with looking at society and being angry at the way things were going, and this feeling of being disempowered but wanting our power back and not knowing where to go and how to get out of that. So I started really deeply thinking about all of that at a very young age, and thinking about how the world that I see around me, it doesn't make sense. And I don't really know how I'm supposed to fit into that world or what I'm supposed to do. It all felt very meaningless, I guess you could say. Yeah. And when I got to college, I actually ended up meeting a Buddhist monk. He came and gave a talk. And something about that, it felt so right. I said, well, there you go, Seth. It's not necessarily about you having to find something in the world to do, but it's like, what are you going to do in this world or with this life? And what really made sense to me was to take that journey inward, to see myself. And, since I was a kid, actually, I had a lot of paranormal experiences, things with, ghosts or objects moving, or I think from a very young age, I was aware that there was more going on anyway than we're told. So I think that also allowed me to kind of see a little bit through the constructs of the society that I was shown and look for something deeper. So I would say that becoming a monk, it was really a culmination of a lot of different factors of my life. And it just felt right. It felt like that feeling of familiarity, like almost like coming home. So when I graduated college, I was invited to visit the monastery, and I went to visit and ended up staying for 8 years. So that just kind of became my 20s.
Wow. And in that 8 years, I'm sure you must have done a lot of deep work, and you must have seen depths of yourself. Totally. Unparalleled, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So what made you decide to leave?
Well, I like to tell people that I went into the monastery because it felt like the next right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And then I also left the monastery because it felt like the next right thing to do. Right. So I really feel that the 8 years that I was there, I feel that I really connected deeply to myself. I really processed a lot. I transformed a lot within myself, and I began teaching meditation, leading retreats, helping others. I was already being invited around the world to lead retreats during my last couple of years in the monastery. And it just got to a point that something started to feel limited. And also our monastery itself was falling apart. abbot actually came out as kind of, he was living like a double life, and there was also like abuse and things that were going on. So kind of like the same thing you hear about in churches, right? So it seems like I got to this point where I also started to see, oh, even these religious institutions, these spiritual institutions that are supposed to be there for the greater good, they're still part of this larger scale brokenness of our world and our society.
Yes.
And I felt that also I had by this time the answers within myself, that I really was able to now be my own teacher, that life would now teach me. And I felt very confident in that, although it was terrifying. And I think I understand people who maybe stay in relationships or jobs or life situations that they don't like, that don't serve them, but because the security of it all. And it was terrifying for me to eventually make the decision to leave. You know, I raised a little money through donations, but I just hopped on a plane, went to India with a backpack, and then I was on my own.
Wow. So that kind of egg of support that, you know, that cradling was pretty instantly gone.
Yeah. I had a pretty good realization as well that, you know, us as people, as humans, we take a lot for granted, and we all feel a sense of entitlement, whether we know it or not, because we are born into families, because we have things around us, possessions, clothes, food, whatever. And when I left the monastery and I just felt everything evaporate, and I just had this robe and the stuff in my bag, and I said, wow, you know, there's so much that I took for granted, that I felt like the base level of life is supposed to be +1, you know, plus people, plus community, plus care, plus food. But then I actually saw, no, the reality is that we exist at a zero, that you have nothing as a human being. And then everything on top of that, that's a gift, right? That's something that we don't have to have, but we're just lucky to have. And so I felt, and it was a very humbling experience to just feel, wow, it's just me in this robe, but also how genuine to the experience of what a monk is supposed to be and go through, that we are really supposed to be letting go of everything and become vulnerable and live on dependence to the communities around us, and to practice without really knowing, you know, where our next meal is going to come from, where we'll necessarily sleep the next night. So there was something actually very authentic to the experience of being a monk wrapped within that, which I was also very grateful to experience.
What a beautiful journey, and what a trusting process that it must have been for you to go through this. And you know, 8 years is a long time, and then 2 years of travel, and before that, all of the years as a teenage boy with, you know, this contrast that you were feeling. It's quite a process, and quite a interesting experience that you can share perspective that most people don't have because of the busyness, right?
Right, definitely.
Yeah. So I certainly don't want to belittle what that experience is, though I feel like we could talk about it for an hour or more a day even. But I'm curious how this sort of transformed, you know, how robe with the backpack, not knowing what was next, not knowing where you'd sleep, not knowing where you'd eat, how that transformed into the Siddha healing traditions.
Sure. I think you were right on with the word trust earlier.
Yeah.
All that I knew was that I was going to go to a place called Bodh Gaya, and this is where the Buddha gained enlightenment. And I didn't know what I was going to do there, but I said, worst case situation, I can just sit in front of the tree that the Buddha sat under and, you know, just soak it in for as long as I need to, just to kind of recover. And so I went there, and I felt that I followed this progression of trust, that I just kind of felt what was the next thing to do, what was the right person to talk to. And it really just took me on this amazing journey of traveling around India by hanging out with the Tibetan monks. And then they invited me to their monastery up in Sikkim. And then it took me back down. And then So it was this kind of winding journey of trusting and just following this flow. And I actually ended up leaving India, going to Australia for 3 months to go on retreat at a monastery there, coming back home for a couple months, and then going back to India again and spending another 8 months in India. And it was on the second kind of turn of the crank, as you will. On my second or third day there, that's when I disrobed. And I felt that I no longer wanted to have a separation between myself and the outside world. I no longer wanted people to look at me with a certain position or a certain kind of like an inherent spiritual authority or worth because of the costume I had on. I really said, I want to make this as honest as I can. And it's this funny thing when you become a monk. On one hand, you're becoming more honest than ever, but on the other hand, you're very much taking on a role and a form, and it has a lot of cultural components to it already. You have to perform a lot. We're almost like we have to act like we're these kind of monks in public, and then we can do, whatever we want. Not whatever we want, but, we can relax in private. And that was not interesting for me at all. I really wanted to live in my integrity all the way through. And there was just something about it that I said, for my personal growth, I need to drop this robe. So I left the robe, and then I took it was an 8-month then journey from South India up to North. And by the time I got to North India, that's when I started really making prayers and asking for my life purpose. It just started coming in. I said, I really want to be connected to my life purpose now. I'm ready. Yeah. And it was just within those couple weeks that I started making those prayers, and I arrived in Dharmsala. And very quickly, I met this teacher, Danny, who was the lineage holder of Siddha Healing, and he's been training people there for a while. And it all happened, and it felt right. And all these synchronicities ended up happening. He was staying at the same place that I was staying in South India. And I actually ended up doing an ayahuasca ceremony organized by his wife and a shaman from, Chile that was visiting. It was all these crazy things. And so it just felt right. So I said yes. And I received this training, and I honestly didn't even know what I was saying yes to. It was only almost like the second to last day of the training where I said, are we learning to be energy healers? And he said, oh yeah, that's what. And I was like, oh, okay. So it kind of made sense. And then after I left the training, friends of mine, because I just, make friends wherever you go, people started in India as I was traveling asking, oh, what have you been doing in India so far? So I said, my journey. And then I did this training, and they said, oh, you do energy healings. Can I get a healing? So I said, okay, so I would give a healing, and then the things that I was experiencing in the healing, the other person was experiencing as well. So I was being shown that it's real. And then the next person would say, oh, you got a healing from her? Well, I want one too, So in retrospect, it was this feeling like it was being pulled out of me. It wasn't something that I ever thought I would do or even knew about, but it's almost like the universe was saying, yes, this is where you're supposed to go. And I just followed the trail of yeses, the trail of people saying, can you help me? I need this. And the more that I've been doing the healing work, the more that I've actually realized even my time in the monastery was a healing process. It was healing a lot of stories, healing a lot of traumas. I think there's something important within this that I've learned, that our path is already within us.
Yes.
That we all already have our traumas, our wounds, our issues, our ancestral baggage, our past life baggage, the things that are going on right now in the world that are hurting us, all that we've been through. And that stuff needs our attention. It needs our understanding. It needs our love. It needs healing. And we don't really need to look out to go on a healing path. And so it all kind of came together, and I saw that my time in the monastery was actually about healing me. And then I feel like the second part of my life, although my own process and journey of healing will go on for the rest of my life, but I see that it also really started focusing more on how can I support others? How can I take these tools and share them, and help be a container for other people to go through their own healing journeys as well.
Right. Wow. It's there's an eloquent way to which you've shared your story based on the teachings that have been translated to you in the process. And I really appreciate that. And I think that a couple of things to just point out are this idea, one, of following the trail of yeses, right?
Yeah.
That's so, so important. And we so often forget that, one, that we're receiving messages, right? And two, that we can say yes to them without completely upheaving our life. And the other aspect is, this idea that our path is already within us, and that we don't need to go out and look outside of ourselves to get on the healing path, because that's within. The power of healing is within us. We are granted that gift. Yeah, really, really beautiful.
Yeah, one of the important things that I realized in the monastery, I said, listen, the Buddha gained enlightenment, right? But what does that really mean? It's like we're all looking at the same painting, and then one person just says, aha, and they got something. And enlightenment isn't something that's outside of me. It's something that's within my own experience.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, how do I shift my own experience, the stuff that's right in front of my eyes, right in front of my mind? How do I shift my experience to make it something called enlightenment? And it's a fascinating journey, because you realize that it's all just right here in front of your face in your own experience. What is the difference between the Buddha and me? How does he see enlightenment right here and I don't? And that's really all it's about on so many different levels.
Yeah. And that's something we can play with every single day, right? That's something we all have the opportunity to play with and tune into and access, which is pretty magical, and I think that's one of the gifts of being human, right? Is this idea that we can taste it, we can smell it, we can touch it, we can feel it, we can see it, all of these things, and it's right there. So it's our perspective that gives us access, of course, to enlightenment.
Right.
Yeah.
And I read actually a great Ram Dass quote this morning, is that he asked a spiritual teacher, what's the meaning of life? What am I supposed to do? And the teacher said, well, if life is a school, then follow the curriculum. And it's very much in line with the same understanding that I have, right? It's like your path is right in front of you. Like, look around. It's in your relationships, it's in your thoughts and your emotions, it's your beliefs, it's how you live your life. There's so many people sitting in these, what I would call miserable life states, thinking it's somewhere else, like there's something else to do. Oh, I need to go here and do that. And it's like, clean your bedroom, right? Do the dishes, say you're sorry, say I love you to people. It's right here. Just start doing it right around you, and then it'll eventually expand and it'll kind of ripple out, and more things will start to come in. But it's the simple things too, and I think we often overlook that.
Yeah. You're right on. I love that. I want to talk about, what is Siddha Healing?
So I kind of want to say I don't know. And that's because it's kind of like an ever unfolding experience for me. So my teacher, Danny, so his teacher was Abdut Baba Shivananda, and his teacher was Baba Nityananda, and it's this, Siddha Healing lineage that goes way back. And, we did these trainings, and he came and he put his hands in our head in something called Shaktipad, where he activated us and connected us to the Siddha energies and all of this. And I said, okay, I don't know what's going on. And then as the healings themselves start, and I guess I can maybe better explain it when I just talk about my experience of it, is that people come and they lay down, or somebody comes and they lay down. And then I visualize different protections around the room, and I build a crystal mandala to anchor the energy. This is all things that was taught to me by Danny. And then I just kind of give the command almost, and the energy opens up. And I feel that person almost like in a perceptual way, kind of like floating in front of me. and I can feel them, and I can feel kind of their energy and their emotions, and sometimes I even feel how their energy is like stuck in them and different things. So it's almost like a hologram or something. I don't know how else to say it. I'm just presented with almost this person in front of me. And then I can go in and I can move stuff and kind of plug them into better things, rearrange them or lift them up. And again, I just follow the yeses. I follow what feels like the next thing to do. I have no idea. If you ask Seth, how do you heal somebody? I'd say, I have no idea. But you put me into that space when the healing is happening, and I know exactly what to do every second. I know exactly how to do it, moment to moment. And then by the end of the healings, you know, people have everything from chronic pains that they felt that they say, oh my God, like this is the first time I haven't felt pain in a long time, or mental things suddenly make sense, or emotional themes are clear, or they just feel like they've had an amazing peaceful rest. Or interestingly, people also sometimes experience like needle pricks and pains and things, or emotions coming up that they didn't want to feel, right? But that's part of the journey as well. Yeah. Is that sometimes you have to feel it to heal it, right? Sometimes you have to go into the pain to process. Yeah. And also something that's been very interesting is that sometimes people feel when I come over to them energetically. I just sit there, but they can feel when I'm kind of with them specifically. But also something that started happening more and more is that people are also experiencing other beings coming into the room. So my first, one of my first group healings, which is something that, again, I didn't learn. Someone just asked me, can you do this for a group? And I said, I don't know, but let's try, Yeah. So I did this healing for, 20, 30 people. And afterwards, I was like, so how was it? And someone said, oh, well, it was really beautiful when you came and you placed your hand on my heart, and I said, it wasn't me. I've been sitting here. And then the other lady said, yeah, but when you came over and you like touched my shoulder, and I was like, wasn't, and then everyone starts talking. And I said, well, how many people here felt me touch them? And, almost everyone raised their hand. And that's something that happens a lot is that people feel, but maybe someone will very clearly say, I know that was my grandfather who passed away, or they'll feel like it was their guide who they've been in touch with. So there's some people that are already on this kind of journey that can already identify that's who came to me. But oftentimes also people say, I just, somebody was there and I felt that they were loving and they were there for me, but I have no idea what that was about. So it's also been expanding my own, I guess I could say like my cosmological understanding of the universe and of reality. It seems like what these healings do is they create a portal, like an interdimensional portal. It thins the veils between dimensions. And I feel personally like that goes all the way up to something that I would call like source energy. I'm not a religious person per se, so I don't use the word God. I don't know what that means. It means something different for everybody. Yes. But I've been realizing through the healings that, it's like kind of like the best way I can describe it almost is I've seen in like a sharper image catalog or something, there are these little, like a lamp that sits on your dresser and it has constellations on it, and you turn the lamp on and it projects the constellations onto your walls. Yes. So my feeling and my kind of experience is that everything we are experiencing, everything that we see, we feel, we touch, all of this, it's all being projected outward from something called like a source. So in a way, it's like we are all connected to one thing and we are all parts of one thing. And simultaneously that one thing is there. Yeah. And I feel like when I do the healings, because some people say to me, we're like, oh, well, what do you do? Like, how do you protect yourself? And what do you do with the energy you pull out of me? And for me, it's like, it's not that linear. It's not that compartmentalized. So my experience is if I feel like a block in somebody, or I feel something like an energetic, and I move it out of them, it just returns to the everything. It just goes back to that place where everything is a part of. It's not like I'm smearing, dirt on the carpet and now, I've removed it from you, but now it's over here. Right. It feels more like it just becomes part of that thing which we are all a part of. And that's kind of the best way I can describe it. And that's something that completely has come to me over time through doing these healings, is that I'm just opening up that connection between this place and that place and letting that find a natural balance. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think a little bit about this idea that, you know, matter is really energy and energy is really matter, right?
Sure.
And if we can sort of get our mind around the quantum physics of that, which more and more research is showing is possible, then what you're saying makes perfect sense. Because the idea is that everything is transformable. And if it's transformable, then it can return to source in that form of energy, and it can return right back to us as source, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe.
Cool.
I have no idea.
It's very cool stuff. I love the way you talk about your sessions, and I'd be curious to know what you find the most special part of doing the healings in the way that you do them. How does it feed your soul?
Well, one of the things that it does is, because when I was a kid, you know, I had these different experiences of like ghosts in my house and lots of more things than I can mention right now. But I used to try to tell my parents about it, and they'd always just chalk it up to an overactive imagination, or that I'm dreaming, or, you know, they come in the room like, well, we're here now, where's the thing? And I'm like, I don't know, it's like, it was just here, you know. And there's something really special about being able to bring people into that world with me, where I can kind of smile afterwards and say, see, it's real, you know. I get some kind of validation on a deep level like that. But
boyhood joy.
yeah, really, seriously. But I love it. You know, it's like when I was at the monastery, there was a lot of people who had different interests. You know, some people liked gardening, and some people liked art, you know, or bookkeeping. I don't know. You know, people just had different things they liked doing. And I just really, really liked spirituality. It's not like that, you know, was something that I had to do because I was a monk. I really enjoy learning and experiencing things and making new experiences, you know, and growing. And so every time I give a healing, I'm doing something that I actually just love. I love being in that world. I love being in community in that place. And I mean, to also then be helping people, right? To really be able to guide, to aid, to, you know, be a catalyst for people's healing processes. It's so rewarding, right? It's just so fun. I love being in community doing positive things, you know, and it's, you know, everyone always leaves with a smile on their face. I always feel, this fullness in my heart, like, wow, that was cool, you know. Cool things happened, and also just the gratitude that comes back. You say, oh, I'm doing something great. And I'm very honored, you know, because I know that a lot of people share things with me, or that they allow themselves to be open in ways that they make themselves very vulnerable. And maybe there's things in themselves that they don't even really want to look at or admit, let alone really share with anybody. So I really honor that and appreciate that people, they allow me in, right? That they trust and that they're ready. And it takes a lot of courage too. Yeah. So I'm just in appreciation and honor that I'm allowed to work with people on these really deep levels as well.
That's beautifully put. You know, healing modalities are kind of mesh together in many ways, right? So we have specific names based on different lineages.
Sure.
Yet most of them are fairly well seated in the idea that we're doing something in the highest and best for the individual that we're working with, and really awakening the healing power that's within that individual, right? So what do you think that this modality has gifted to you in that essence? Maybe virtues, or maybe something specific with your own healing.
Right.
Yeah.
So much, you know. I mean, I began this healing work, the Siddha Healing specifically, by doing self-healings every day too. So I was really filling myself up and feeling the power of this. But
yeah,
I think if I look at the Siddha Healing as a whole, it's really given me a definite life purpose. It's really shown me a whole side of what I can be and what I can do that I never imagined possible. And on top of that, on this trip cross country, we also did some ceremony with Lakota Sioux Indians and did some ceremonies up in Vancouver. And we started now recently bringing some Native American aspects into the healings. And I started giving the healings with my partner Shannon, and she does aromatherapy and Reiki. So I do the Siddha and she does that, and then we'll play the drums, and sometimes we'll have people come in. And so it's really taken on its own kind of thing where it's becoming more of a ceremony, which was, to be honest, something that I wished for, that when I started doing more ceremonies, you know, around a fire and intentions and instruments and things where the whole community is coming together, I said, this is really what I want to do. I love ceremony. I want to do ceremonies. And I feel that the Siddha Healing is now slowly looking like ceremony a little bit. So it's kind of also able to just flow and mold to whatever also, you know, I want to give, or I feel that I am to give, what feels like is coming through me. So the healings, they also really invite me to listen. I feel that there's been some great ego work that's been done, because I would get very tired when I gave healings at the beginning. And I kept, you know, and I do maybe 1 or 2 group sessions a week. So I'm in twice a week around Massachusetts yoga studios, you know, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, giving healings to groups of, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people. And I am forced to continue to look at myself, and forced to, for instance, I'll be tired after a healing. I'm forced to say, Seth, why am I tired? Yeah. Is it because you're channeling energy? And I said, actually, it's because I want to do a good job. Right. You know, which is something that I thought was a good thing. But I said, no, that's your ego. It's not about you. It's about the people. Right. And it's like, oh, right. So it's like, as I'm giving these healings, it's almost like if you know, you have a hose and it's on full blast, you know, and there's any little like blockages in that hose, it's going to hit them really hard. So by doing these healings, I feel like all of the subtle parts of my ego are getting hit, and it's forcing me to let go, to surrender more to the process, to you know, allow my intention and the group intention to kind of be the point, and to open up the space more than thinking like I am doing or I have to do. You know, it's even at the point where I don't even say that I give the healings anymore, right? I just kind of facilitate it. But it's not like me doing anything. I'm not healing anybody, right? And I see that's a huge gift, along with, as I was mentioning before, this new understanding that we are not alone, that there are other beings that are around, that are helping us, that are there for us. Yeah. You know, that we are not alone. So, you know, so just besides our intention creating that space, there are energies and beings around that are also there with us, and that are a part of that for us, you know, and that's a really beautiful thing when we start to experience, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Seth, I like to ask everyone, you know, what the work that you share does for the collective consciousness, how it impacts and sort of touches the collective. And we've sort of gone there a bit already, but I'm curious to just blatantly ask that question and see what comes up with us today.
Right. I mean, I'm not even sure what collective consciousness, what that even means as a term, to be honest. But what I could say is that I feel that as far as people and a culture and a society and a community, that these healings are providing a service. They're providing a sorely needed place of solace, of rest, of spiritual connection in a trusted, authentic way that they maybe are not able to get in other places. And also on the very specific individual healing level, a lot of people have, been, how do I say, I guess just healed of different aspects and ailments and things that are going on in their bodies and their minds. And it's also collectively, so it's lightening the collective load, I guess. Every person that becomes a little bit happier, it's a little bit more happiness in the collective of us.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, I mean, I've now given healings to thousands of people, right? And for now thousands of people to know that, oh, this is real. Energy healing is real. Dimensional stuff is real. Spirituality is real. Energy is real. That there's something to all this stuff. And you see spirituality and energy work, and it's like edging, it's at the edges of this, and it's slowly kind of coming in. I mean, they do Reiki at Dana-Farber, and then Mass General now and stuff. Reiki is becoming accepted as like a real thing. I teach meditation, and they're inviting me into schools and universities and companies to teach meditation. So it's like, I feel like culturally we're getting to the place where we're ripe. We are hurting, we're broken, we need help. All of the systems that we have been turning to are crumbling. They don't work anymore. Yeah. And we're looking for answers. And I feel that a lot of these practices and understandings and traditions are starting to seep into mainstream culture and society in a way that they have not been able to do in the past. So I say that this is just a part of what I would call like a cultural awakening or a worldwide awakening. But a lot of other cultures in the world already know about this, right. And they look at us and they're like, yeah, we've been doing this since before time. Why are you guys just getting on board now? So I would say it's a cultural awakening, but America is an important country in this world. So it's like when we awaken our community, we awaken the state, we awaken the country, and we awaken the world, right? So it's all kind of part of the same process. And there's so many people doing the work right now. Even this podcast, right? You are doing the same work that I'm doing. Right. It's like we are all just opening up different channels and portals and streams for people who are interested, who want help, who, want to understand or raise their vibration, as people call it, or whatever that word would be. Awaken, that we are all just coming out with these portals for awakening. And the kind of work we're doing only would work if there was clientele, if there was an audience, if there was people that were interested. So even the fact that I can do this work means that people also want this and people are ready for it. Yes. Right? And that's why we're seeing just all of these, life coaches and healers and teachers and yogis and retreat centers, and it's all kind of blossoming and blooming at once because it's time.
It's time.
It's time, yeah.
I have chills. That really resonated with, my own beliefs, as this whole conversation has. But sure. Wow, what a powerful note to end upon. And I think it's so important. You're right. The way that you said it, the idea of lightening the collective load and facilitating this cultural awakening. And the fact that it's happening in so many different ways with so many different channels, it's so available. And I think it's so available because we need it so much.
Right.
Yeah. This is good stuff. This is really good.
And I want to also just say it's worldwide.
Yes.
So when I traveled through India, I met hundreds of people my age, young people, and they're turned on. They have answers. They've been going to monasteries. They've been going to shamans. They've been going to nature. They've been looking at plant medicines or sacred geometry and music. That everywhere I went, I was meeting young people who are like blasting information at me and understanding and really, really, really awakened. And then I'd go to the monasteries and then the ashrams in India, and I would feel that it's not there anymore. That those are places that's used to be where we turn to, but I really feel like the lineage holders, the information holders are among us.
Yeah.
That it is happening all over the world, that there is just this, you know, the tribe, the rainbow tribe, right? As some of these native traditions talk about, that there's just people of all colors and classes and races. We're all waking up together. And really the most important thing we can do is to inspire each other, to share, to remind each other that we're here, right? There's too much stuff on the TV and in the news and around us that makes us feel more and more isolated, like everything's getting worse. And on some levels, things are getting worse, but those are the systems that need to end anyway. If you really look around at the people, we are waking up together. Like, we are making huge movements in collective agreements and understandings and justice and things. It's happening right now.
Yes.
So, you know, don't get blinded and lost by the darkness, right? That we really need to know that there's so much good work happening all the time. We're just not hearing about it. But I can tell you, you know, I've been to 25 countries. I've traveled the world. It is happening everywhere.
Yes.
And it's happening right here in this country, in this state, in this town.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just for us to be a part of that. Yeah. To share our gifts, to connect, to inspire, support, empower each other. And that's it. That's all there is. Just do good stuff, do good work, and it'll all just go in a good direction.
Do good stuff.
Do good stuff.
All right. Well, I think that's a great note to end upon. Do good stuff.
Do good stuff.
I love it so much. So, Seth, your website is pretty easy for friends to get in touch with you, sethmonk.org. SETHMONK.org.
Yeah. And you can also find me on Facebook. I lead a lot of healings around, meditations around Massachusetts. I'm also, if I can just plug something real quick.
Of course.
Also leading 2 retreats to the Bahamas, one in April and one in October, for like a meditation, yoga. It's at an ashram, and a relaxation retreat, restorative process. And then I'm also leading a trip to India the last week of September to the first week of October. And I've led a few of these already. This is the trip that I've been waiting to lead, though. So I'm going to lead people starting in Nepal, and we're going to then travel the Buddhist path, stopping at all of the most important ancient Buddhist sites, the place where he was born, where he died, where he gave his first talk, and where he became enlightened. So this is the journey that I took as well. And I've just been waiting to finally share that with people. So that is something that I'm doing for 2 weeks at the end of this year. And I'm very excited and looking for other people who are interested to go on that journey with me.
Magical. Wonderful. It
Cool.
sounds amazing. And of course, as you mentioned it, I instantly went back to your journey and how you painted the picture of that. So It sounds amazing. It's wonderful. And folks can get information about your retreats on your website, of course, and get in touch with you through Facebook and all that good social media stuff. Seth, this has been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for holding this platform and connecting people. Thank you so much.